Hello, welcome to the Job Walk Podcast, an interview-styled mobile podcast where we go out into the field where the professionals are and share helpful information on buying, selling, remodeling, designing, or building your home. So join us for a job walk. Hi, we're here today with Terra from Terra Designs and Interiors, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So we're going to talk today a little bit about how to work with an interior designer and the best way to do that. But before we get into that, Tara, could you just give us a little background about yourself and your business you currently have right now?
Sure, absolutely. So I started about 3 years ago, so I'm relatively new to the design world, but I came from fashion and ran my own company in New York for many years and wanted to do something more creative. So I just found myself loving to redesign my own home. We sold a couple homes on our own personally, and just loved the idea of flipping them and renovating, selling, and moving on. And so I formed my company 3 years ago, and actually this month, so that's exciting. And that's where we are today. And so now we have a shop in Bonsall, California, and a studio as well. So we get to help out the locals with their tile and countertop needs, and also service design clients and have our meetings here and have our home decor and gifts as well. So it's fun.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
One of the things, I have a lot of conversations with people that are looking to do projects in their home, and often have conversations with people about how they are intimidated by interior design.
Yes, I've heard that.
And I get the
process.
Yeah, so if you could share where we start in the process from the very beginning.
Sure. Yeah. So I think before even getting into that, I think it's really important because I do hear that same thing from potential clients as well about how they're intimidated or they don't know where to start or how to engage with an interior designer, that it may be cost prohibitive for them. And I think that, the one of the biggest lessons I've learned so far and things that I've brought from my background to all of this, and I have a yoga teaching background as well, is that hearing what the client's looking for is really important from the beginning, and knowing if that client is going to be a good fit with us and if we're a good fit for them likewise. So I think going into that relationship and engaging with the client, it's really important to have the necessary steps with, if it's just you as a designer or if you have a team, but making sure that everyone's on the same page before you get started. And so I'd say that to me is number one. Number two would be managing expectations from the get-go. So I think what I've heard from other clients that have then been gun shy later to hire a designer is that they didn't know how much things were going to cost, how many hours things were going to take. Maybe the scope wasn't clearly defined enough to identify that number of hours, or tracking hours along the way. Where do they stand with how much is still going to be due at the end of the project? So I think those kind of things really leave clients into a stressful scenario where it doesn't need to be like that. So that's one of the things we really work hard to do, is manage that expectation from the beginning and say, okay, for your bathroom, we estimate it, to be 30 to 40 hours. And here's our hourly fee. And so they know about what it's going to cost. And if they want to add to the scope, then they can add later. But I think that having that expectation up front is really important. So then you just get all that stuff out of the way and then just have fun with the client.
So does it start, they call and then you set up an appointment and then you come out and walk through the spaces? Do you give them a questionnaire, or is there anything you like to sort of prep them before you meet?
Yeah, so right now, how we're operating is people reach out to us through our website, or they give us a call, or they come directly into the studio, and then we identify their scope and give them an estimate of number of hours. And so we're sort of doing the contract ahead of time before we actually go on site and meet, because it takes a lot of time for us to go on site and meet with potential clients and walk the properties. And then typically when we're there, we can't help ourselves but give ideas. So once we're on site, we want to be able to give those ideas and talk through those specific lifestyle needs with the client on site. And so we don't want to have later where we haven't gotten all the paperwork stuff out of the way. So we like to do that first, get all of that out of the way, and then we get to set up our first appointment where we come in with, we take pictures, we take measurements, and then we can talk details about their lifestyle, which is a huge part of design for us.
Right. I could see how it would be the energy of sharing and ideas and brainstorming is sort of
it's a natural thing for us. We want to do it,
you're excited about
yes.
it and you want to share it, but at the other hand, like, you don't want to just give all of your expertise away. So
right.
It makes sense to have the contract up front. What would you advise someone? So if let's say they're going to redo their kitchen or something like that, and they just don't know where to start, how would you add to the process or bring some clarity to the process for someone in that space?
So I think there's a disconnect between, walking into, let's say, a tile shop and selecting new tile and countertops and hiring the contractor and how all that comes to play. And so sometime maybe we aren't necessarily needed on a project. It could be just a simple swap out of backsplash and someone's done some research and they know what they want, and that's all good. But if you're talking about a full kitchen remodel or a full bath remodel, especially when it comes to walls and moving things around, and again, going back to that lifestyle, like it's a single vanity, but we need two vanities, and how do we incorporate that? And then, whatever those requirements might be or those wishes might be. So I think, using a designer can be a great segue tool to take, the materials that maybe the client might be attracted to, and then giving them a presentation that helps them to understand how all those materials will come together, including greenery and decor and lighting and all of those components. And then a lot of times what we end up doing, and our clients hire us for it, is helping to manage the general contractor along the way as well, because I think that also becomes really daunting for the client. If they haven't worked with contractors before, sometimes they're not sure how to manage that expectation with, especially if they live on site,
right.
It can get kind of chaotic. So we kind of help them through that process too.
And then how do you address the concern that people have that they're not going to be heard? So, there's just sort of an image out there of an interior designer, which probably has a lot to do with HGTV or some of these other things. Like,
right.
They don't feel like they kind of know what they want, but they just don't know how to put it all together.
Right.
And have turnkey, so everything goes together. The everything functions and just has sort of a soothing feel. The silverware, the cutlery, special pieces, and all those things. So how do you reassure someone, and probably your yoga background helps.
It does, for sure.
So they don't feel, because there's just this intimidation thing that I definitely hear from clients.
For sure.
It's hard to describe exactly what it is. It feels like a pushback sometimes. So how do you get over that bridge?
Yeah, it's a hard hump to kind of cross over. And I think it's twofold. I think one is it's obviously a trusting relationship, right? So, but first you've got to get to the place of trust. And so I think that's basically what you're asking. And I think, my recommendation or, suggestion when looking for a designer is, in doing research, does the designer have an aesthetic that they do on repeat? And is that the aesthetic that you're looking for? And if you are, that's great. Go for that designer or someone who does an aesthetic that's exactly what you want to emulate. A lot of our clients, though, they're unique. They're creatives. So they have their own aesthetic, and it's nuanced. And so I love working with creatives because I feel like I get to really tap into what is their creative mind about, and what do they gravitate to, and how do we need to set up a room to cater to that creativeness. And so I think understanding that part of people, and yes, the yoga background and listening and, making sure they feel heard and is really important. And then I can take that and provide them with a design that is specific to what they're looking for. And it's not a general design. It's not something we do again and again for all of our clients. It's really specific and catered towards them. So I think if they can understand that in the engagement process, and they trust that we are listening, and they see our portfolio of work, and they can see that we have done different styles of projects, then hopefully they're comfortable. And
so if you have a specific furniture, maybe it's a photograph or a piece of art, or grandma's coffee table or something like that. How is that something that somebody, if they're interviewing interior designers, they should share? Really have this piece that I love so much, and my grandma had it, and all those kind of things. Should you? And I'm talking from the customer point of view. Should you mention that to your designer that you're working with, or how do you handle when somebody has these pieces that they're really emotionally, or maybe they think they're emotionally attached to? How do you work those in, and what should an expectation of someone be if they're hiring somebody to give them their opinion, except for this?
I usually just ask the question. So if somebody says to me, I want to redo my living room, and let's say in the living room you need 10 pieces of furniture, and they say 5 of them are something that they want to keep. I always want to take a look at what those pieces are. And again, we're flexible with our design. So we try to do everything that we can to, build the story that fits in with their world. Sometimes it may just not be a match. And sometimes, it could be that the client might be better served hiring a specific type of designer that they can go out and go shop with. So there's that kind of a designer as well, where they take the client out and they, go shopping with them. And so every piece is picked as a team. We don't select anything for our clients without their approval. And so they see everything up front. We're not coming over on install day and surprising them like some people see on HGTV. Right. So I think, to have that execution, you really have to trust the person that's doing that for you, right? So there is trust involved in working with us, and that's obviously I'm speaking to our experience, but at the same time, we are working with our clients every single week and getting approvals along the way. So we're not surprising them with anything that's already situated. So I'm always open and flexible to incorporating something that is, something they want to use. Oftentimes they're open to reusing it in a different room, but they want to keep the piece, or maybe we refurbish it if it's not in great condition, but they want to keep it or put new hardware on it, or.
And do you find that sometimes it's just a process of letting go to let the new come in? In other words, this coffee table that seemed really critical to the space,
right,
as an objection, right, to move forward, it sometimes just takes a little bit of time and getting more into the process and establishing the trust, like you said,
and getting them excited. Yeah. And then once they see the new vision and they get excited about it, then it's easier for them to let go.
Right.
Yeah.
That's I think that has a lot to do with that. And
the attachments.
The attachment. I think the trust that you're talking about is really obviously critical. What are some of the other things that you would share with people when deciding to work with an interior designer, to help make the process more successful? Some steps. Should they interview several people? Should they go look at their work? Should they talk to references? That kind of thing. What are those kind of...
I think all of those things are really important. And I think, having having an understanding. Let's say you do your research, okay, you're a potential client, you're looking for an interior designer, and you find 3 to 5 through Instagram or websites that you really like. First I would look at their reviews and see if, that kind of filters 1 or 2 of those guys out, and then contacting them and seeing what their response is like, because even sometime I can tell through email whether I want to work with somebody or not. And so having that dialogue is obviously the first form of communication, and so if they like how the designer replies to them in a timely manner and also like friendly, and doesn't sound like they're so big or too busy, or, and time frame is a big part of it too. How quickly do you need to get the project done? So that's a big part of it as well. But I think understanding, once you've pretty much selected the person that you're going to work with, or you're in the interview process, is understanding what that designer and that design team is going to lay out in terms of expectations. So what is the exact process? And if they can't tell you what that process is, that may not be the right person to work with. Because that's an expectation thing. Yeah.
And then what about, I'm sure a lot of people want to know about how much does this cost, right? That's what everybody wants to know. So what are some realistic budgets that you would share with people that would say, you probably, maybe an interior designer isn't right for this particular project,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe for another project it might be more appropriate. Are there any kind of guidelines where people can sort of understand ahead of time, and I know this is a hard question to answer, um, by room, um, by the scope of the work, that you could feel like you add the value there to create the space? I think good design adds value in terms of the end result. So in other words, you can go into a house and see if somebody did sort of an owner builder kind of thing,
Right.
and that house might have a value of this, but
Mm.
if you had a professional team come in and put all the pieces together, a lot of times a good design professional will actually pay for themselves or add extra value at the end
Right.
because it's done so well. So I think I lost my train of thought.
So in terms of like an average cost per room, and I think, to answer your question on that, it is hard to say. It depends on, again, the scope of what that work is. Is it just furnishings and decor, or are we talking about a kitchen remodel? And obviously those are two different, conversations and lengths of time. We also do commercial design. So for us, we're doing a restaurant right now that has 5 different restaurants within its main umbrella. So that's a really big project, and even something that's probably a little challenging for us to quote because we don't know what we're going to come across. There are designers I've seen that do, a $500 flat fee per room. I don't know what they're getting for that. I don't know how the designer could do everything they need to do. We're a full service studio, so we source everything. We place the orders on behalf of the client, follow up with, make sure all the shipments arrive on time, and then we have our handy people that can do the install or, drapery or whatever is needed. So it really is a full service, for us. And I would say it's more of a luxury service. I don't necessarily think that design is meant to be for everyone. I wouldn't actually hire a designer myself. I guess that's kind of silly because I can do it myself, but I don't know that I would. It's just not an area that I feel like I would need to hire for, but I would say, an estimate per room, something that, for the design fees, somewhere around 2,500 is probably a fair number, just as a rough ball estimate. And it depends on the location that you're in. I think I just read that San Diego's hourly rates for designers is anywhere between 75 and 300. And then I think New York goes up to 500 per hour. So it really depends on where you live as well.
So it probably makes most sense to reach out to an interior design firm if you have a little bit larger scale project, unless you're just looking for some guidance with like colors, maybe.
I think so, but I think probably that would be a stylist more so. And there's a lot more. There are more stylists coming onto the scene now. So instead of a full interior design studio, you could hire an interior stylist that would help you. Maybe if you're looking just for a paint color and some finishes.
Okay, that's good to know. I didn't know there was such a thing.
There is. I know. I think it came during COVID. It was one of those new things that came out of COVID. Surprise.
So if somebody's going to work with Terra, they are going to have a consultation, right?
Right.
To kind of find out if it's the right fit
Right.
moving forward. And then the next step would go into a contractual arrangement, right?
Mm-hmm.
You probably have different levels of contracts, I'm imagining, the first one, and then if you get into actually purchasing the materials and coordinating the installation and all those things, is that right?
We usually try to establish that up front, so we can just
Okay.
include that in the scope and also in the estimate of hours. And typically, we only take projects that we do all of that for.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Is that pretty consistent, you think?
I think so.
Okay.
For the most part, yeah. I think so. I'll tell you what's changed though is that because of COVID and delays with furnishings and so forth, I don't know of many studios, and we don't do that. We don't have like an install day like that people see on HGTV where everything comes over at once. There are designers I think that are larger than we are that will house everything. And if you're doing a new build, you have time for that, right? So you're 12 months out from moving into your home. So you have plenty of time to also get furnishings. They get sent to a warehouse and then they get installed all at one time. But right now, if you're looking to redo a few rooms, most of our clients are saying, no, we don't want to have it warehoused. We want to just have it sent directly to us. So it's kind of PC in that we're sending our people over to do stages of implementation, basically. So we work that out with the client and talk about timing and so forth. So.
And then speaking of timing, so what's a realistic time frame? Let's say you're going to update your kitchen, maybe not a full remodel on your kitchen, but then incorporate in that as your living space and maybe your dining area.
Right.
So what would be a proper expectation time-wise from beginning the design part through the approval process and then the actual logistics of finishing the project?
I would say 6 months is a fair number right now. It kind of depends if you do any custom furniture, but 6 months is a good estimate.
And then throughout that time, you're talking about budget and going over those things, right? So people feel comfortable.
Exactly. So for our design services, our hours are always made available to the clients if they ever want to get a snapshot, but we bill monthly. So the clients are tracking each month. They know where we're at as it relates to what we've estimated. And then I'm sorry, what was your question? I just lost my train of thought.
Okay, I totally understand. So I did it earlier. So the timing. So we have the design process,
right?
And then we have the actual construction and logistic. And we talked about that being about 6 months,
right?
And then we were talking a little bit about budgeting and how you communicate.
Oh, yes. So we have an online tool that we use that basically houses all of that information. So it's really cool. So if you were redoing a family room, we would send you, after we establish the vision board and the colors and everybody's on the same page with the aesthetic, we would send you a shopping board for each of your rooms, however many rooms you're doing. And that would include tile and countertops and accessories and all of that. So the client can actually shop from that file. We give multiple options and different price points and color, and they can ultimately make the final decision. And normally that's made through many phone calls
right.
To kind of narrow it down. But each of those rooms can be set up with a budget. So we know and we can track along the way and make sure that we're staying on budget. And so if we go over in one room, maybe because the sofas are more of a higher priced item,
right.
then we can, look for a bar stool that might be more price conscious.
That's really helpful.
Yeah, we really love it. It helps everyone.
So I want to backtrack a little bit. What is a mood board exactly? What's the definition for a mood board? I hear a lot about vibe and
right.
mood boards and stuff.
Visions.
Yeah. What exactly is it? I mean, is there a definition that people could expect to see?
Right. I think it's really it defines the space. So what it does, it sets the tone, is how I'd like to say it. It sets the tone for what the room or the house is going to feel like. So it's going to have a number of elements, from materials to paint color to texture and all of the elements. So maybe it's a modern home, or maybe it's a earthy space. So whatever that style and aesthetic is going to be, this hones all of those elements in. And so before we dig in and get too nitty gritty with, and burn through design hours, we like to establish that ahead of time with the client. So, if they're like, hey, let's swap out that blue for a different blue, or do you have something that's a little bit more earthy, or whatever that feedback may be, we could change it from that vision board, also called a mood board. I don't know why everybody calls them different things, but those are all the same.
So I'm in Terra's studio right now, and so I'm looking at some mood boards, and so on there I see like some natural, elements like the sky. I'm seeing, sofas and some artwork and things like that. Does every mood board have particular elements, or is it just the things that help communicate the overall feeling of the space?
You nailed it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a communication tool for sure.
Okay.
And it's a feeling. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah. Great job summarizing that.
So we're going to wrap up today. We will have future podcasts with Terra. We'll get more deeper into trends and things like that. But for the end of today, if you could just let people know where to find
Sure.
you and maybe the location of your shop. She has a great shop here. That would be great.
Okay, yeah. So you guys can find us on Instagram. Our handle is at Terra Soul design.co, and it's TERRASOL design.co. And our shop is located in Bonsall, California, which is just east of Oceanside.
Great. Thanks, Tara.
Thank you
Thanks for
so
your time
much.
today.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.